Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CCS Alumni Live. CCS Alumni Live is a weekly conversation where we talk with graduates from CCS about their journey from high school to career. I'm Brandy Keeler. I'm Assistant Director of Admissions at CCS, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. So I'm going to read, I see our guest is already in the chat box. Read our guest bio, add them to the live so we can start our conversation. So today we are speaking with Leah Waldo, who is a mixed media sculptor specializing in cast glass, hand-built ceramics, fabricated steel, cast bronze, and sound elements. Leah graduated from CCS in our Craft and Material Studies department with an emphasis in glass and ceramics. Leah's work explores her experiences with loss, grief, healing, and transformation, something personal yet universal. The intention of the tangible objects and aural environments that Leah creates is to create space for viewers to voice their deepest thoughts without social constructs, shame, or fear, so connection and healing can emerge. Influenced by ceremonial traditions such as the Japanese tea ceremony and the morning offerings at the Balinese shrine, Leah creates as a way to process and express their internal world, releasing thoughts and feelings in objects and sound. Without further ado, I am going to add today's guest to our live. Just waiting for it to connect. Hello, Leah. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Wow. I'm really I feel like I'm a believer in divine synchronicity and things happening at the perfect timing. And I think it's just literally the perfect time to talk to you as an artist, not only with what's going on in the world and the themes that you cover in your work, but particularly what's happening in the CCS community right now. We actually lost a student this morning, or excuse me, on the 18th. And so there's
Wow.
grief that we're processing through as a community. And so just to, know that your work explores themes of loss and grief and healing, I think it's the perfect time that we're connecting right now. So I just wanted to take time to acknowledge that, for anybody who's tuning in from the CCS community, that's something that folks are processing through. But I wanted to have you tell me a little bit about what you've been working on and creating this year, just because there's so much that a lot of people are processing through in this time. What are some of the things you're currently working on?
I'm actually making sort of like meditative landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
I just got back from a 4-month-long kind of sojourn of sorts. I'm also processing some like personal grief as well as like the collective grief that we're all experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been collecting stones and rocks wherever I've gone, which is something that I've always done and made into pieces, incorporated into my work.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm making right now are sort of like really distilled landscapes to encapsulate some of the feelings that I experienced while I was gone, around stillness, peace, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sort of like my idea with these pieces are ways to like visualize your thoughts flying in like birds and sort of swirling around the stones,
Mm-hmm.
basking in the sun on the stones, and then gently slipping into the water that I made as part of the pieces as well, and then sort of just like disappearing.
So
It's kind of
I
like
want
a
to see
way
it so bad as you're describing. I was like, oh, that sounds so amazing.
I haven't unpacked. I mean, they're all just studies right now, but this is something that I've been working on. So just collecting like very small stones, casting them in resin. This was like a little crystal piece that I found at a thrift store. So kind of like the idea of having something really refined with in contrast to like the natural landscape.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like
that's cool.
Something to sort of just like imagine your thoughts moving around, resting on the stones, and then just sort of releasing down into the water.
Yeah. I could use some of that right now.
Yeah. I also do breathwork sessions with friends and family and stuff, especially this year. So you're always welcome we can always set up a session or so.
That's awesome. Tell me a little bit more about your day-to-day work as an artist. As I think one thing that I talk with a lot of students about is students who feel that art is a release for them. It's a therapeutic journey, but they're not sure how to connect that to making a living and surviving, right? Um, Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about the day-to-day for you as an artist and how you're able to, process using your art, but also like eat and live.
Yeah. So I chose to get a job with an automotive company. So
Mhm.
I'm a clay sculptor by like trade, I guess. I didn't study clay sculpting in school, although I took my first ceramic courses at CCS and then kind of like continued with that, fell in love with the material. I took an internship with an automotive company to see if that was a viable job to kind of like support my art practice, because what I didn't want to do was make creative decisions based on income.
Mhm.
So that was like really important to me to have that like freedom without the constraints of making money off of my artwork. So while I do sell my artwork, it's not like my sole source of income.
Mhm. I think that's powerful to hear, that you didn't want the industry to dictate what you're doing for your creative process, but you're still working in a creative role, right? You're still doing
Oh yeah,
essentially art
definitely.
for a living.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I definitely I mean, I utilize all the skill sets that I use in my work with the automotive sculpting.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like cool that both translate over and speak to each other.
Hmm.
And then I was able to build a studio and, not have to go into debt doing it like piece by piece. It took a while, but it was like, it was the decision that was best for me.
Hmm. Hmm. And that's what I want all of the students tuning in, all the graduates tuning in, everyone to be thinking about as artists and designers, right? The whole purpose of, pursuing a degree, pursuing a creative path is so that you live a life where you're fulfilled, right? You're doing what you want to do and making the choices that are best for you and your path.
Yeah.
Um, that being said, what do you feel like, between your art and your personal practice and what you're doing in your, to pay bills as a creative person, what do you feel you're spending more of your, maybe not time but mental energy on? Are you constantly thinking about the things that you have to do at work, or are you always, thinking and planning for your own personal projects?
Ah, yeah, the work that I do, I'm essentially like I'm the hands for designers. So I translate their sketches into models.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while it has taken a long time to refine the skill set I have, it doesn't take a lot of mental energy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I listen to a lot of podcasts, audiobooks, music, and then I also keep a journal on my Tabaret, which is the toolbox. It's like a rolling toolbox that all the sculptors keep their
Mm-hmm.
tools in. So I always keep a journal in there, and then I'm constantly like sketching and writing throughout the day. So I can spend like my thought life is while I'm very engaged with my work and dedicated and getting the job done, I'm able to kind of like do both, and both help me stay focused
Mm-hmm.
on what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
That
Because
makes total
I
sense. Yeah.
noticed if I spend so much mental energy focusing on what I'm doing, I start to kind of second guess myself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I get into the flow of just allowing the work to come through my hands and then also have something going on that I'm thinking about, it allows me to be even more efficient.
Mm-hmm. That makes total sense.
Kind of like the best of both worlds, but everybody works differently. That's just
Mm-hmm.
what works for me.
Yeah.
And then nights and weekends are kind of when I create. This year's been quite different for me. I'm processing a lot of grief with losing my partner suddenly last year.
I'm sorry.
So I have been making artwork, but it's not as like regular as it was like previously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all good and it all kind of feeds each other, especially with
Mm-hmm.
my work. Like it all sort of like works together.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk about that topic, and that's why I was saying it's kind of synchronistically divine that we're talking with you today. Um, a question I have is, about like processing through heavy things and using art as a medium to do that. How do you balance that in a way where you're not judging yourself throughout the process, like making space for, okay, I'm not producing at the volume or the level that I am because I'm processing through heavy things? Do you have a challenge with that, or do you have any advice for students or adults who are trying to create in the midst of trauma, loss, grief, etc.?
So I think that showing up with your best will look different at different times. And allowing compassion and grace to show up alongside your best, I think that can help you rest and settle into that space of, this is my best for today, or for this moment, my best looks like this. And sometimes your best is like going to bed early, or taking a long bath, or going for a walk, you know?
Yeah.
Eating a healthy meal. So sometimes you may not have the energy, especially when you're processing heavy stuff, you may not have the energy to really get into your studio and spend hours and hours making something that you really love. But you may have, you know, your best may be that you just spend time journaling. And that's also really good, because it all fits together. Like, we as humans, we can't compartmentalize anything. So even though
no matter how hard we try.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like this thing where one thing isn't isolated from impacting everything else. So if you're taking care of yourself in one area of life, that'll flow into other parts.
That's huge. That's wonderful advice. Wonderful perspective to have as an artist and designer. All right, so I'm going to take it a little bit back into my normal format for our alumni lives and talk about what you've been most proud of in your career, whether that's something you've done as a clay modeler, something you've done in your own art practice. Do you have one project or assignment or piece that stands out as like, I'm really proud of this moment in my creative life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, having a solo show before I was 30 was like a goal of mine that I was able to accomplish, and that was really awesome. But I think the biggest thing was doing the work internally that allowed me to be fully present with myself, which also has enabled me to be fully present with everyone else. And then that's translated into my work with being more I guess open about what the piece is about. At the time when I was making work in my early 20s, I didn't even realize that everything was sort of like, there were meanings for myself, and then there were meanings that I invited other people to explore.
Yeah.
But by having the work be sort of, instead of fully sharing like what the piece was about, if that makes sense. So like I would have these meanings that I embedded for myself, and then everyone else had the other access, which was also meaningful. But now by sharing the full bit about the piece, it's more impactful on a deeper level. And that's kind of like reflective of where I was at then versus where I am at now. Like, I'm an open book. I welcome people to like get in touch with me or talk to me about whatever, because I feel like that's really important. The human experience is shared, and so when we kind of like isolate ourselves or close off parts of ourselves, everyone's missing out on that, not just ourselves.
Wow. That compartmentalization not only serves to distance us from others, but it can impact us. That's
totally
awesome. Yeah. I definitely would think that would be, going inward and doing that self-work that allows you to be honest with yourself and the world about your work completely. I imagine that gives you the energy to create more powerful work, right? Like it's a cycle, right? That's awesome. That's the first time I've heard like a personal inward spiritual journey being a career highlight, though I'm sure it's behind a lot of the other career highlights that we've seen here on IG Live. Because you can't do powerful things in the world without doing powerful things internally, right?
Yes, that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And honestly, like as a byproduct, I've seen the career impact and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it all starts like from within.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that without the internal work, I wouldn't have the external results.
I hope those who are tuning in are taking notes, because Alicia's just dropping jewels of wisdom like this through this interview. Oh, that's so wonderful. So it sounds like a really great place to be as a person, as a human in life, let alone in your career. I'd like to now take a little bit of a journey backwards and talk about who and how you were in high school as an artist, because a lot of the people that, you know, are tuning into this channel and people that we connect with at CCS and at Missions are high school students or younger college students who are just at the beginning, right? Even prior to their early 20s, at the beginning of their creative journey. What type of artist were you in high school?
I wasn't an artist in high school.
Tell me more about that. What were you into? What were you interested in?
Well, I loved art and music, but I never considered myself an artist. I didn't take art classes. I took like a drawing class. My educational background is a little non-traditional. I was homeschooled, so there was like, especially back then, there were everything was less accessible to homeschoolers. So I didn't have like the access that some people may have had in like the public school system or private schools or whatever, charter schools. So yeah, I actually took my first like official art class when I dual enrolled at a community college. And it wasn't super rigorous, but it was really good for me to see that like I had a way to put my energy into something that I really enjoyed. And then when I studied abroad in Japan because I have like a different degree than my degree from CCS. So studying abroad really opened up a whole new world for me and allowed me to take Japanese and Chinese brush painting. And that was like a huge thing for me, where I was like, I need to do something that's really creative, expressive. And it really I was able to access a different part of myself than I had before. So
tell me a little bit more about what led you to your first degree. So you took a dual enrollment class in high school, but what did you study first? What were you interested in?
So I was really interested in different cultures and their traditions, and a lot of that revolves around food. So I studied the culinary arts and hotel and restaurant management as my first degree. Went to culinary school, which was like super intense. Did that for 2 years, and then wanted to like finish out my degree. And yeah, I was like interested in doing personal chefing for people who wanted to maintain a healthy lifestyle. And then I just realized like after doing it for a few years, it wasn't like a really good fit for me. So then I like started working. I got to apprentice at a glassblower studio, and then worked at different places, and then got the chance to go to CCS. So that's how I ended up there.
That's why I was like, let me pry some more, because I always love hearing the journeys for artists and designers.
My journey's like very like winding, but it's like, all of them have been stepping stones to the next space.
And it sounds like for you, all parts of that journey have still been creative, right? Like culinary arts is still an art form. You know, it may not be visual art, painting and crafts, but there's a craft element to being a chef. There's a visual element to being a chef.
Oh, absolutely. High respect. I have like super high respect for people who are chefs. I still have friends in the industry, and it's such a high art form. It's really amazing what people can do.
So tell me this, you said you apprenticed at a glass studio. How did you land that opportunity? Like, where did that come from?
I took like an intro to glassblowing class. It was kind of like a one-on-one with the owner of the studio, and she sort of walked me through making a cup, and I just got really into it, and she could tell that I was really fascinated and offered to let me apprentice after I'd taken some classes to kind of learn the basic skills. So I think she had apprenticed previously, and that was how she saw that she called it the bug. So I think that's how she saw that I had the bug, and sort of created I guess you could say a program for me to be able to apprentice with her.
And when you were bit by that bug, what led you to think, let me go get a degree in this versus just taking classes to explore it further? What pushed you to looking into CCS?
I kind of felt like I needed, because I didn't have many art classes under my belt previously, I wanted more like the theory, sort of a deeper understanding of form and material. So I felt like going to a school that offered that would be supportive to my creative journey. So that's why I like started looking into, and actually I remember my mom and I just went to talk to the admissions to see if I could take a class or so, and then we just ended up getting into this whole conversation about what it would be like to be a student there, and then she came back with like a scholarship package that was really workable for me and my like very minimal budget. So it was like super nice. It worked out on many levels.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, and every day I was at CCS, I felt like I was just in a dream, like waking up, making tea, having a smoothie, and then going to class or going to work in the studios. It was really awesome.
And tell me this, since you transferred because you had previously taken classes, were you there for a full 4 years, or did you have less time while you're at CCS?
I think I was there for 3 years. Yeah, because I was a transfer student. I think I was just there for 3. It was like 10 years ago, so I don't remember all the details. But I think it was a little shorter because my credits transferred over, which was awesome.
Right? Yeah. Less time means less money, but still getting the quality that you need based on where you're coming in from. So
well said.
Definitely. Yeah. So tell me this. It seems like you had you mentioned earlier that you had an internship at doing clay modeling for the automotive industry. Was that during your time at CCS?
Yes. Yeah, I had never even heard of clay sculpting. GM contacted the ceramic department and asked if there were any ceramic students interested in applying for their internship program. And so that's like how I heard of it. My mentor, Tom Fardell, came over and was like, have you ever heard of clay sculpting? And I remember us going to his office and kneeling at his desk and Googling clay sculpting and watching like a YouTube video of it or something and being like, I think I could do that. I mean, yeah, I should try. And for a long time, I had this thing that I wasn't trained in transportation design, so I wouldn't like be as much of an asset as someone who had. But one of my mentors there told me that it's really important for them to have a diverse perspective in the studios. And so they like do a lot of their hiring based on that. So they want artists there. They want working artists there to kind of like bring a different perspective.
I think that's a helpful thing to hear for students who may be interested in, ceramics or any of the craft disciplines, who are concerned about, that having that studio practice that really matters to them, but also like, paying the bills. I hear that being a concern for a lot of my students. I'm like, artists can eat, don't worry. But I think it's helpful to hear that like industry wants artists as well, right? It's not just like, yes, museums and galleries want to see your practice, but it's nice to hear that like industry is interested in creative perspectives as well. They don't want a bunch of, all of the same homogenous types of thinkers and doers in their spaces. I think that's helpful to hear. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very valuable.
All right. So Leah, I have a couple more questions for you. I can literally talk all day, and I want to just personally offline talk more to you because I just love your energy.
We can
Yeah. But I want to make sure that folks who are tuning in know that if you have questions about being a working artist and designer, having a craft practice, processing through your work, any of the things that we've talked about thus far in the interview, if you want to ask questions for those, please do so. I know I'm asking a ton of questions, but this is your chance to ask questions. So that's why we're live. So if you do have questions, be sure to place those in the question box at the bottom of your Instagram screen so I can ask Leah those on your behalf. But while we wait for questions to come in, if anyone has them, a question that I'd like to ask on these interviews is, what is one thing you would say you've gained from specifically your time at CCS that's really changed the way you either view yourself, your life, your art, your practice? Like, what's one of the nuggets that you'd say you grabbed from your time at CCS?
I mean, in addition to all of the like the physical hands-on skills, I learned how to meditate with a style that like really resonated for me while I was there. I took a class, it was called Consciousness and Creativity with Molly Beauregard, and that was awesome. I think she still teaches it. If she does, like, I highly recommend anyone take it, because not only does she help you break apart like all the things that society has fed you as a person, and help you create sort of like your own innate sense of being. He also brings in some teachers so you can learn how to meditate in a format that like works really well for like the artist brain. So that was like a big takeaway for me. I still meditate every day, using the same technique. Up until that point, I had tried different things and nothing like really stuck. So that's been really valuable.
And remind me of this, because I've heard of the class a lot. Was it transcendental meditation was the form that she was teaching?
Yes.
Yeah. I've seen that was not just a transformative class for you, but for a lot of students, to the point where Molly had a documentary made about the class, and now there's a book about the class. Yeah. That's awesome. Yep. I feel like that's a beautiful thing to get from. I always tell students, like, the skills that you learn in college are like 1/6, 1/7 of, all the many benefits, right? You gain community, you gain confidence in your work, there's so many things. But I think one of the most underestimated is like self-awareness. It's something that comes from spending so much time and energy in pursuing your creative voice. And so knowing that there's not just, classes that help you with the skill set, but classes that help you with like self-understanding and self-awareness. I sometimes forget about that and take that for granted. Like, that's a part of the experience here. Really powerful.
Absolutely. It is.
That's awesome. Okay. All right. Let me see if we have any questions from our audience. Not yet. Okay. I have my favorite question of all to ask guests, and I feel like you have some amazing insights. I wish I could take notes during the interview so I could just sink in all the lessons immediately. But a question I have for you is, if you had access to a time machine and could go back to your high school self, what advice would you give yourself about pursuing your path, knowing what you know now?
And it would be any advice?
Any advice.
Honestly, I think just like learn to trust your instinct. Like, trusting your gut is so important, and it's something that is so undervalued. There's actually a recent study where they found that we actually do have like the same kind of thinking cells that we have in our brain, in our digestive system. So there is some truth to trusting your gut in that like inner sense, that inner compass. And I would love to tell my younger self that.
That's so real. I feel like there's so many things in society, traditional education, and you were homeschooled, but like traditional education, society, there's so many things that I would say like kind of encourage young students to do the opposite, right? Like, listen to your teacher, listen to these people, they know what's best. And I think sometimes that can make it difficult for adolescents, young adults, to trust their internal reasoning or logic or beliefs. I have so many students where they're like, this is the path for me. I know this is what I want to do. But my counselor and my parents and everyone else are saying, like, this isn't real, you know? Yeah, but on beyond the creative path, I think just in general as a human being, that's amazing advice. I think, you know, for myself, had I trusted myself and my gut at 17, 18, I'd be in a whole different place. I'm in a pretty good place, but I feel like, you know, life would be completely different.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and then with like navigating, you know, authority, stuff like that, like I think there's something to be said to being able to communicate respectfully and also you know, still stand for what's important to you.
Yeah, because no one else lives your life but you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Leah, it's been such an awesome conversation.
Likewise.
I don't see any questions coming in from our audience. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap up our CCS Alumni Live today?
I don't think so. I mean, if anyone thinks of anything, they can just go to my website and send me an email. My website.
Can you, for anybody watching the recording, can you plug your either handle or website where students can go to learn more about you and if they want to connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. My website's just my name, leahwaldo.com. My handle is Leah_Waldo for Instagram. So people are free to reach out to me. I've also been running art auctions to raise funds for organizations that stand for racial equity. So if anyone's interested in contributing, we have one that's going to be opening up next Wednesday. So feel free to reach out to me about that or anything else.
Now tell me a little, I was wanting to plug this earlier, but I couldn't find the right place. Tell me a little bit more about what start these auctions and how you're pulling the art, right? So if there's a student who's here at CCS or a high school student, like how do they know if, I know a lot of students struggle with confidence in larger platforms, like how do they submit their art? Are there qualifications? I just want to know more about this art auction process.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of just like made up. I until this year, I didn't really use social media that much. I still am not like an avid person on social media, but I've realized that it can be a really powerful tool to connect and communicate. So I just started hosting auctions on my personal page. What I do is any contributing artist sends me an image, and then I have them like send me, you know, the medium, title, stuff like that, like what their estimated price would be, and then what they'd like it to start at. So essentially, I'm just the facilitator. Everyone gives me the information. They hold on to the pieces, and then I just facilitate the auctions through my page. And then when things are sold, like when the auction ends, I just contacted the highest bidder and connect them with the artist, and then the artist ships the work directly to them. So like, yeah, if somebody is wondering if a piece would work, I'm sure it would. They can reach out to me and we can have a conversation about it. But I would love to, you know, engage younger artists as well.
Awesome. You guys heard it here, whether you're live here, the few of you who are here, or watching the recording. If you want to get your work out there and seen and also contribute to a powerful platform, please connect with Leah. Leah, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, sharing your journey and your personal truth with us today. I know it's been transformative and healing for me, so I can only imagine for the students watching how powerful this is. I want to thank everyone who's tuned in today, and I want to make sure everyone knows that this is our last CCS Alumni Live of 2020. So we're going to take a break for a while, but we will be back in 2021. So be sure to continue checking here for how to finish your application. And we'll see you in 2021 with more CCS Alumni Live. Thank you so much, Leah.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.